Morning, Brandon Hardison, Champion Strategies, giving you another public speaking opportunity to hear some of the best things that are out there. We know that teachers, for the first time, are going back, and we applaud you. You happen to be a new supervisor or manager. Maybe you've been speaking for a while, and now, once this virus is hit, now we're confined to this box, or you're just trying to find some information because you don't want to pay for information. And I can appreciate that as long as we're practicing. So let's get right to it. Today, what we want to really look at is why do we give good information speeches? Now, think about you who are tasked with the job of giving purely information to a team or your peers, or maybe you're doing it for your organization to other organizations, or maybe you're trying to attract a client. So, information. So, why we speak to information is this: information speaking is a means for the delivery of knowledge. Once again, the content deals with knowledge in an informative speaking way so we can avoid opinions. We don't want people to express their opinions at this time. We just want them to gather all the information that they can. This doesn't mean that you may not speak about controversial topics. However, keep in mind that if you do so, you must deliver a fair statement on both sides of the issue of debate. If not, you're going to be hammered, if you will. If your speech is about standardization of educational testing, remember we talked about the new time teachers, you must honestly represent both views. If you don't give both sides in an informational speech, it's not going to make it. Also, you must not slant. You must not tilt, skew to a side of a debate. You have to be neutral when presenting that information. You're simply, clearly bringing the information to the people. If you watch any one of the major networks, ABC, CBS, CNN, see the newscasters who undoubtedly have personal opinions about the news, but they were trained to avoid expressing opinions. And I know that in today's world of the virus, you do get a whole lot of newscasters, anchors giving their opinions, and this is not what they were trained to do. So I'm telling you, like those newscasters who came up, and go back and look at Walter Cronkite or some of the other ones in the past, those newscasters were just giving you the information, not putting their intake at all. Let the other side formulate their own opinions in their minds. This is probably the most important reason for just purely information speaking. Also, making information clear and interesting to an audience gives them an opportunity to draw into you. A clear and interesting speech content can make use of descriptions, casual analysis, categories. With descriptions, you can use words to create a picture in somebody's mind in the audience. You can describe physical realities, social realities, emotional experiences, sequences, anything you're trying to do. For instance, you may describe the mindset of the Massachusetts town of Salem during the witch trials. You can also use casual analysis where they can focus on the connections between the causes and the consequences. For example, in speaking healthcare costs, you could explain how a series of illnesses can put even a well insured family into bankruptcy. Stating just the facts, that's the key with informational speaking. There are a number of principles to keep in mind as a speaker when you're presenting this type of information to keep it interesting to your audience. So, adjust complex situations to the audience. Don't go over their head. In other words, in your speech, if it's too complex, if it's too simplistic, it's not going to hold their interest. How do you determine the right level of complexity? Well, your audience analysis in one point is a way to do it. Someone has already gathered that data, so you know who's in the audience. Will your listeners be on your every word? Well, let's find out what the age group and the diversity of the age group is going to be. For example, going back to teachers, do all public schools in the United States in some form or fashion have listeners that may be international students? Well, yes, they do. I have to find a way, if I'm going to have a mixed audience, to explain this information, which is important, where everyone in there is going to understand what I'm thinking and what I'm saying and what I'm meaning. That's why the verbal, the nonverbal is always important. Never assume, I'll repeat it again, never assume that just because your audience is made up of students, that they all share your knowledge set. If you base your speech on assumptions or similar knowledge, for instance, you're lecturing on communications to a group of students that want to be journalists or public speakers, and you go over their head by something you have been taught, but you're not breaking it down to them, and you're hoping that the speech will go out there in their interpretation. What do we call it now? Going viral. You're going to miss the point. In using words that they don't understand, you're not going to get them to be thirsty, hungry for more of your interpretation of it. It has to be done in a way that they can understand. You cannot assume that what you're saying they understand. We must know our audience and break it down in a way where we're giving explanations to the content, whether it includes definitions, whether it includes referring back to the topic. These are the things that you can do to avoid misunderstandings. Now, similarly, be very careful about assuming that there's anything that everybody knows. Suppose you decide to present an informational speech on the survival of the early colonists of New England. Well, you may have learned in elementary school, middle school, how they survived, what were the attributes, how did the natives help them. But many of your listeners may not know exactly what you're talking about. So many times in your content, you're going to have to clarify to the audience exactly by giving examples of that period, what went on. Other effectiveness to your speech is going to include these things that they know nothing about, whether you show a quick picture of a Native American, sharing, teaching, understanding, then it will hit and said, okay, they got support when they first came here from these group of people in order for them to survive. Now, beyond the opportunity to help improve your delivery, one important outcome for practicing your speech, and if you ever listen to me, it's about practice, practice, practice in front of this live audience or these students that you have. Why not have a few friends, a few of the students come over, and you're just going to say, hey, I'll go through this material. Tell me what you think. This way you can adjust for the real thing. Always avoid unnecessary jargon. Once again, we all come and have different generational jargons that we pick up, but it's hard for some people to translate if you're way over their head. If you must introduce a jargon because it's important to this information, give an example, break down the speech for them. If not, it's going to sound foolish. Other topics, keep in mind when you're doing information, try to keep the technical things limited as much as you can. If you're too technical in a short informational speech with content, you will lose them. Now, this is just part one, but I just wanted to touch on that. Why? The school year is coming up. You, as a new boss, are going to have to be presenting how to overcome objections. We're not getting what we need from certain districts or regions, and you may find yourself in a quarry that you can't get out of if you're way over someone's head. And why do I say that? Well, yeah, they'll sit there and listen, but at the end of it, they're going to say to themselves, I'm afraid to raise my hand because boss might get on me. So just let me keep it short, limited. Now, if some of this makes sense, hey, I appreciate it. Tomorrow, we'll look at part two of giving informational speeches. But in the meantime, Brandon Hardison, Champion Strategies, as always, imparting, going out and making a champion.